Media literacy sounds really dry. I get that. And even elitist in some ways. And I finally understood what people have been saying to me all these years when I read an article by a great computer educator named Adit Harrell. And she made the argument that these new coding platforms, like my friend has one called Ready, getready.io, that these new coding platforms are essentially too easy, that they're not real coding, that they're pop coding, and that because they let kids just drag and drop elements into a field and give them properties and decide if they have gravity or if they bounce or if they're alive or if they can shoot, and because they're drag and drop, because they're object-oriented, you don't really have to learn code in order to use them. So you can make a game, you can make a program without understanding the underlying code architecture, without knowing a word or a line of Java or Python. And she and people of her ilk, computer science educators, are really upset about this because their whole lives have been about getting people to learn Java and COBOL and the original real computing languages, helping bring people over the threshold into the digital world. And these platforms instead bring the computing world over to where people are. Now, I understand this argument. I understand this divide. When, the Macintosh came out, a lot of us were actually upset by how easy it was because even though the interface was easy, you could drag things, you could drop them, put them in the trash, there was no auto-exec bat file on a Mac. At the same time, it felt like we were getting more and more distant from the code inside the machine. That as the machines get easier, users have less and less control over what they're doing. So I get that argument, and they see pop computing as a bunch of designers making decisions for kids and everybody else on what parameters will be open to them. I see that. But on the other hand, most programs out there these days, most ideas that people have are not completely original new lines of code. They're rather modular. You even look at something like Uber. I mean, is it the code that makes Uber? What's Uber? Uber is essentially a GPS program tied to a cash register program tied to a dating program. So if I had those and I could put them together the same way that, say, GarageBand lets me put things together sounds together on my computer or my iPad, I get something pretty close to a program. I actually get a workable, viable program. Certainly for a game or to understand how these worlds work, it really should be fine. So I think what we need to do is begin to change our way we understand what literacy is. There's this elitist notion that, we have to help the peasants to understand these languages so they can be among the elite priesthood coming out of Stanford who understand these arcane languages. It's akin to saying that everybody has to know how to read Torah Hebrew in order to be a Jew, say, or know exactly the origins of the letters of the English language to know that A came from a bull and B came from a house, or that M is the water. To know those things in order to know how to read and write. You don't have to know what's at the level beneath you all the time. People who are coding in C++ and Python, I guarantee you, they don't know machine language. They take their code and put it in a compiler, and the compiler turns it into something that the machine knows. Who knows what the machine knows? Well, there's people at Intel, who make chips. They know what the machine knows. So even the priesthoods each have to trust the priesthood beneath them, that they're giving them all of the options, giving them all of the opportunities of what the chip can do, of what the operating system can do, of what the program can do. So for me, media literacy is understanding the level on which you are working. It's used to be being able to read the paper and understand the bias of that paper, to read an article and see how are they stacking up the facts and how might they have stacked up the facts differently. It's It's being able to watch television and see who's actually paying for this show. What's the communication technique being used by this commercial? Why do I feel nervous as this announcer is talking? What technique are they using on me, and what do they want from me? It does change in a digital age, though. It changes from being able to read the media to being able to write the media. We now live in an interactive age. So media literacy isn't just what you receive, it's what you make and how you make it. What you understand is possible with these technologies. What is possible? How can I interact with this thing? How can I author something? What is possible? Is the thing that I want to do not possible because the technology really doesn't do it, or because the designer of this interface doesn't want me to do it? And that's where it gets interesting. And once we can design, once we are capable, even if we don't know the core code languages, once we can design our own interfaces, design our own platforms, then we can bring in questions that maybe many coders aren't thinking to bring in. Then we can bring into Uber, well, I understand what the experience is for the passenger, but what's the experience of Uber for the driver? Does Uber let the driver forge solidarity with other drivers? Where's the chat function? What about Amazon Turk, where all these people are working for pennies an hour? What is the experience for the worker? What are the implications of Airbnb and its platform and the way it's programmed for the towns in which Airbnb is operating? And why isn't it open to towns and local legislation and regulation? So once we're involved in coding, even if we are not the coders, once we're involved in authorship of these programs and the kind of authorship that true digital literacy allows, then we're no longer depending just on the coders for what's possible. Well, the coders and the people paying them. Then we can participate more actively in the digital world that we're building and hopefully create something that promotes the interests of Team Human rather than continuing to forget them.